It's just trying to figure out. I'm never sure I've seen half once because I was fancy. So I'm where I move the world team that has to support it. Thank you for coming here. Okay. It might not be the topic but you go to say okay. Right. So after this subject tutorial will probably last about half an hour. And then I'm very happy to stay around and answer questions. Anything that comes out of this, you just let me know questions on this. Okay. So what I'm really specifically zooming in on, I'm really specifically zooming on one critical unit, and that is psychoanalysis. So psychoanalyzing the characters in the Tempest, specifically. Okay. So this is A05 because it is a critical reading of play. So we talk about this as psychoanalytical reading. The way that I'm going to explore the psychoanalytical reading is by looking at the characters' journeys. So therefore, I'm looking at the structure of the play. So I'm doing the A02 as well. So a psychoanalytical reading really lends itself to looking at how characters change and develop across the play. So we're also doing journeys and learning and shifts and changes in characterization. Okay. Also, within our sort of psychoanalysis of Prospero's character, which is what I'm going to focus on, I'm dealing with the theme of conflict because I'm looking at an inner battle within his character, between two sides of his psyche. So this sort of picture that you can see, these three pictures, sorry, that you can see on the board, capture what I'm going to explore. So I'm going to explore that Ariel and Caliban symbolise two sides of Prospero's psyche. Okay, and that is basically what I'm going to deeply analyse and zoom into during this tutorial. And therefore, I'm going to be looking at how Prospero changes, how he develops, and how you see that reflected through Ariel and Caliban. Okay, so I want to start by looking at Caliban and arguing, essentially, that Caliban symbolises the base, primal, animalistic side of Prospero's character. And in order to do that, I'm going to try and show you how similar Caliban and Prospero really are. Okay. So at the beginning of the play, Prospero uses language to describe Caliban in a particular way. Okay. You have animalistic language to describe Caliban. So he's literally described as a tortoise. Okay, a tortoise. He's described in a derogatory way. He's described as a slave and as a litter. So something again common in the world. He is demonized by being presented as poisonous. And he's also belittled by being described as a tortoise and well. So you have huge needs of negative descriptions, and I use the words animalistic, demonized, belittled, and derogatory to describe him. But what's really important about this is actually, if I see if I can make this smaller, there's another one at the bottom. You've got it on your PowerPoint, Hadborn. Okay, so Witchborn. So that's the way, one way that he's being demonized as well. But I want you to really think about Prospero as the director of this play. Okay. This is the first time, these are the first descriptions that you ever hear about Caliban as a woman. So Prospero is shaping your perception of Caliban before you even look at him. That's how powerful he is. Okay? He is shaping your perception of Caliban and your reception of Caliban before you even meet him. This is our first impression of his character. Okay? But then when we meet Caliban, and you actually look at the way Caliban talks and the way Caliban thinks, and you compare it to the way Prospero talks and the way Prospero thinks, it's clear that there's a real mirroring or symmetry in the language that they use, and there are not so much similar wrong. So I've chosen quotations that the characters use in the same scenes to try and show you how alike they could be argued to be. So in Act 1, Scene 2, further on from the list of quotations that I just showed you, you have both Caliban and Prospero talking about torturing and causing suffering and causing harm to another. Okay, so Caliban says the southwest blow on me and this to you all over, and he is talking about Prospero and anger, and Prospero says about Caliban, I'll wrap you with our cramps, fill all thy bones and aches. Now that sort of torturous language and that language to do with violence and aggression is coming from his rage. So both of them are rageful and wrathful. They feel wronged by somebody. Okay? So Caliban feels wronged by Prospero and anger, and Prospero feels wronged by Caliban. But they behave upon feeling that way, upon experiencing that emotion, in very similar ways. The second pair of quotations, Caliban says in the same scene, this island's mine. Prospero says to Miranda during his exposition of what's happened to them, and also talking about the backstory. If we were to talk about the plays of tragedy, between the exposition in the first act, he says, thy father is the Duke of Milan. Both of the characters are concerned with ownership, title, status, power. Okay? And both of them are very cross. But what they feel is their rightful title has been taken away from them. Okay? And then you can see that reiterated, emphasised in the third set of quotations on the screen, which first was mine and king. Caliban's talking about how he is the rightful heir to the island, but it's his legacy. And Prospero talks about himself as the prince of power, because he was, of course, the Duke of Milan. So they're really concerned with what's right, and the fact that they're being usurped, so which means there has been taken away from them and given place, usurped. Okay. But then something else happens. So these are quite, these are very negative emotions that they're experiencing. They feel that they've been wronged, and they feel angry, and they feel hurt, and they feel vengeful. Here, what's really interesting is that you also see that they're both incredibly eloquent and clever. So some of you might feel like Caliban is not presented as an intelligent character, and I absolutely arguments for that. Okay, but we learn something really important about him in Act 1, Scene 1, and that is actually that he can learn and he can be educated. Okay, so the quotation that he used here is taken from his speech about Prospero sort of manipulating him. So at first, he gave him all the bones of the head, he loved it, and showed him the first of the island, and he has taught Caliban to name the bigger line and how the less that burned by the daily line. Okay. Now, this means that Prospero has taught him about the world in a religious way. So this is actually from the King James First Bible, the Genesis story, that was published just before the New Testament, that was published just before the play was first performed. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. So this language that Caliban uses is actually a biblical allusion. Allusion with an R, not allusion with an R. Okay. And then Prospero says, I took pains to make them speak, taught me each power. So both of them are intelligent, and they are eloquent, and they can be educated. And we know that Prospero really values education through the way that he spoke about tutoring Miranda and the way that he has taught Caliban to speak. Okay. We also know that Caliban can be eloquent from actually scene 2, where he gives a speech about the islands, 1,000 instruments and how that is. And we know that he has an affinity with nature and that he's able to elucidate that in a very impressive way through the language that he uses. So I suppose the point I'll come back to from the psychoanalytical perspective is that both Caliban and Prospero have these sort of rageful, power-driven elements, but they're also very sensitive. Prospero is really emotional in a lot of ways. He feels really passionately about his daughter. He feels very cross about his evil brother, like I say, and he is devastated at the end by having to give up his magic. So he's really human and complex. So that captures the complexity of both characters. Okay. Now, just going to explore another way that their journeys are similar. So they actually have really similar mistakes in the past that have led them to where they are now. So that is all part of their journeys and their character development and the structure of the play. So my first point comes back to what I've just been saying. Really, Prospero claims that Caliban cannot learn, that any goodness will not come from Caliban, but we know that he can learn. And actually, that Caliban is the corrupting forces of society, and it's sort of the language that Prospero is talking that's made him curse. So he lays Prospero's influence on his downfall and on the negative things that he's experiencing. And actually, his mistake was his naivety in trusting Prospero and loving him and learning from him and taking Prospero at face value. So Caliban's downfall is that he was consumed by his island, and he was happy and proud to show it to Miranda and Prospero. And then if you think about post-colonial perspective, or look at Prospero as the European colonizer, Felix's. Also, you can also complete what's called a lacuna, which is a psychological being that if you lose a parent during childhood, you try to fill that wound with other things. So you can see Caliban use lots of cigarettes, trying to fill that void, perhaps by seeing Prospero as a father figure and clinging on to that false love or that false hope that Prospero shows him. But he's made the mistake of, sadly, loving too much and being too trusting and too naive. Now, Prospero did exactly the same thing in Antonio before we got to the island. Okay? So, Prospero neglected his duty, his temporal loyalty, that's what we hear about in that one scene 2. But he says in that one scene 2 that he loved Antonio more than anything in the world, essentially. So he trusted him with his dukedom, but that did wake a falsehood, an evil nature in his brother, and even brought him also to a certain and sent him away, arguably, to die. So it could be argued in one of those similarities and making similar mistakes in loving and trusting others, and then feeling hugely wrathful and vengeful as a result of betrayal. The Caliban is a physical symbol or a physical manifestation of the heart of Prospero's psyche. So he is comparable to the sort of naive and usurped Jew who seeks revenge. And it could be argued that because of sort of betrayal and honesty, they both become brutish. So Caliban becomes brutish and he tries to break Miranda, and Prospero becomes brutish and he tortures the memory. Okay. Okay. Post-millennial, what that means is LAC, psychological theory about child development. Okay. So they both become brutish as a result of their past treatment. Also, another way that they are is that both of them have been marginalised. Okay, literally, what I mean by that is cast out of somewhere. So Prospero has been cast out of man to the world, and he really is spies there, he's trapped there, he's marginalised there. Okay. And Caliban has been starring in King of the Rock. So I don't know if you've seen the Julie Taylor version, 2011, he comes out from underneath the rock. And the Glow 2013 version, he comes from beneath the stage. So he was literally being held down, physically. Proxenity used to show how marginalised he was being at. And Prospero's marginalised by being sent away from society. Now, I wanted to imagine if Prospero hadn't been cast out with Miranda, if he'd been alone, what might happen to him? Okay. So Prospero says that Miranda did preserve him, that she was a cherubim, and he says that she gave him the stomach to bear up what he was experiencing. But Caliban doesn't have that. He doesn't have that companionship. So is Caliban an exaggerated version of what Prospero would become in the island that didn't have the societal sort of female influence of his daughter? He didn't have love, he didn't have companionship. Okay? Prospero is marginalised through the rotten path of the butt, who that's got loving role. And Caliban talks about the inside resolution that he does. So those resolutions sort of mirror how wronged they both feel. Okay. So both characters show that when marginalised, when outcast, when it's an alienated from companionship, you kind of find base in your behaviour. And Prospero totally has the capacity for that. And perhaps if Miranda was there, he would have become like Caliban. So Caliban talks about being pissed into madness by his situation. Okay, and it's interesting to sort of hear Prospero talking about Miranda preserving his mind, whereas Caliban's mind has declined because of his experiences of marginalisation. So both of them are marginalised, but one has the lack of companionship and one doesn't. So I'm going to move on to areas soon. So this is sort of the end of Prospero and Caliban's journey, and they started in very similar ways. They've had very similar experiences in the past. They've been wronged, they've been usurped, they're angry, they've been brutish. But really, really important, they also change themselves. So in Act 14.1, they have a very similar, which means sort of dramatic realisation about the world, about life. So in Act 14.1, in the middle of the mask scene, Prospero suddenly remembers that Caliban and Spine and Templar are coming after him, that they've got against his life. And we sort of have this movement from sort of the heightened and spectacle, the spectacular nature of the illusion on stage, the very theatrical mask scene, to suddenly there's this monologue by Prospero in which he recognises that his magic is illusory, insubstantial. And he compares it to a play. He talks about the pageant painting. He talks about insubstantial, gorgeous places. He talks about baseless visions. And it's very existential in the sense that he suddenly feels his age. And he suddenly feels that his end of life is coming towards its sort of later stages. He says, we are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with asleep. So that sort of insignificance of the human condition and the finite nature of the human condition. And then in Act 5, Scene 1, he talks about how every third thought shoving my goal. So as he goes back to land, he's very aware that he's handing over to legacy to Lando, and he will move into old age. In the same scene, just afterwards, Ariel and Prospero create the illusion of some hands that chase the final truth there in Caliban. So they create the illusion of garments that they're all looking at and getting caught up in to distract them from their murder plot, and then he makes hands chase it. And Stefano and Tito are really sort of more of this vision, and they believe the crows are real. But Caliban says, let alone thou thought it is but trash. He sees that the vision is in vain, and it's nothing. Just like Prospero realizes in the speech just beforehand that his magic is basic together. So in the same scene, they have these realizations that magic is not possible. It's not powerful, and it can't supersede ultimately death, age, nature. So in the end, it is in many ways. Okay. So it's interesting to note that they're sort of moving simultaneously and developing at the same time and in the same ways during the play. And it's almost as if, sort of through that movement, it's only when they both have these realizations in that forcing mind that Prospero is then able to let go of Caliban. So it's almost as if Prospero's, Caliban, is that sort of face, angry, vengeful, wrathful part of Prospero's character. And it's only when Prospero lets go of sort of the vengefulness and the hate and the need for power that Caliban also stops and seeks for grace and says sorry. So it's almost like that's that part of Prospero's character. And once he sort of lets that go, he's reconciled with part of himself. Okay, so it's sort of about self-reconciliation and self-discovery. And my final slide on Caliban. Then at the very end of the play, they both have very Christian reformations of character, and they both apologise for what they've done. So Caliban uses religious language. He says he will seek for grace. So we can sort of look at that as an allusion to the grace of God. Okay, so he seeks for grace. And he has really Christian undertones to his speech, as Prospero does in his epilogue. And at the same time, you can see in the epilogue that Prospero is also seeking for grace because he turns to the audience and he asks him to pardon, which is incredibly religious. And I suppose he's almost not belittles himself, but he is going to actually be so consumed by power, and all of a sudden, in the face of the audience, the power, he has the power over to you and asks for your forgiveness for what he's done. So forgiveness and pardoning and seeking for grace are very religious sort of behaviours and very religious things to do. Okay. What's interesting is that only Prospero can think about that. Okay? And if we read Caliban as a part of Prospero's psyche, it's like only Prospero can let go of that part of himself. Only he has the power to self-reconcile and accept that he's got to move on and he's got to move forward. Okay. And what's interesting is that he buries his star, he drowns his book, and he says to Caliban at the end, go to my cell. It's the last thing he says to him, go to my cell. And he just leaves it online, as if he's sort of burying that part of his psyche away, as he does when he drowns his book and drowns his star, buries his book and drowns his star. He's leaving those parts of his character behind, and he's embracing another part of his character, which I'm going to move on to now. So if we now look at Ariel, you can look at Ariel as almost the opposite side of his character. So Ariel as the elevated, talented, enlightened part, empathetic part of his character. And I'm going to explore Ariel in a similar way to how I've just explored Caliban, by thinking about how he also symbolises a part of the Prospero's character, and that they develop in similar ways, and that they use sort of similar language, and that they engage in similar behaviours. Okay, so Ariel is in tune with nature. Okay, he can manipulate nature. He can manipulate the storm at the beginning. Okay, he talks at the end of the play in Act 5 to 1, which the first position is about when he gets his liberation in Prospero, all he sings about is going back to the bats, okay, and summer, and being part of the natural world again. And arguably, Prospero is also very in tune with nature in some ways. He can also control nature, because we have learned throughout the play that through his magic, he has redeemed the noontide sun, called forth mutinous winds, set war in the war between the sea and the sky, the created storms, and we even know in that passing one that he's raised the dead, that he has opened graves and raised the sleepers. So he has gone to the absolute darkest place, most blasphemous, sinful place, if we sort of Jacobean religious thinking, in terms of manipulating nature. But both are aligned and in tune with nature and able to manipulate it. And that is one way in which they are similar. So Ariel is sort of like, I suppose, like an exaggerated part of Prospero's sort of talent. But also, ironically, it's also the most magical, supernatural character that seems, from some political perspectives, to be the most humane in the play. Okay? So he also symbolises that part of Prospero's character that can forgive and can be empathetic if he listens to. Okay? It's only when he listens to Ariel that he's able to forgive. Okay? So I find this part of the play really helpful for psychoanalytical reading. Okay? So this part of the play is inspired by sympathy for Gonzalo. So Gonzalo is crying, and he says that tears run down his ear like winter drops. And that's writing one. This is what Ariel tells Prospero. And Ariel says to Prospero that your affections will become tender if you feel to sort of behold this side of Gonzalo. And Prospero asks Ariel, do you think so? And Ariel says, mine will, sir, what I think. Do you love me, Master? No. So full of human compassion and the most profound emotions that you feel love. And Prospero, as a result, decides to forgive. Okay. So Ariel, I suppose, catalyzes his forgiveness and the reconciliation that comes in the play. So Prospero then keep opening, declares, yet with my nobler reason against my theory do I take part. So if we think he decides to use his morality and his moral compass as his guide, and he decides to let go of revenge and magic. So if we think about his nobler reason as Ariel and his fury as Caliban, he decides to let go of Caliban and leave him in the cell where he first sort of started him. Okay, just leave him behind. And he decides to listen to Ariel, to embrace Ariel, and go with what Ariel suggests. And it's because of that that he can be physically free of the isle and emotionally free of I suppose, contempt and anger for those around him. So I find that position really useful for a psychoanalytical reader. So Ariel leads both Caliban and Prospero to this point of realisation and learning, because it's the vision of the hounds and the garments that triggers Caliban's change, and it's this discussion about sympathy that triggers Prospero's change. So Ariel plays a key part in change, character development, learning and journeys. Okay? And ultimately, Prospero's humane side emerges most powerful. And you can also think about conflict. So if you've got a question that is about conflict, you can talk about internal conflict. Because this suggests Prospero is almost alone. The only way through that is to talk, is when there's no reason of his view. So deep down, he's not that he should forgive, but he hasn't those sort of Christian tenets of forgiveness. but he hasn't been able to do it. Now, if you look at the play like that, you could argue that one of Ariel's first lines in the play, in Act 22, where he demands liberty, is that part of Prospero's psyche that seems to be held. Do you know those cartoons where you have a devil on one side and then the other one? But the person's trying to figure out which one to listen to. And Caliban is the devil hagborn, he's actually called Devilborn in play. And Ariel is sort of the more angelic, spiritual, healing character who's demanding liberty, demanding to be heard by Prospero's conscience. Okay? So all the way through, he's been demanding to be heard, and it's only when he is heard that Prospero acknowledges his crimes. He actually calls his behaviour crimes in that law, as you would craft from crimes as part of the letting go and setting free. Okay? So it could be argued that that sort of desperate plea for liberty is that repressed, sensitive side of Prospero, that vengefulness and wrath have been suppressing, and it's only when Caliban is sort of let go of and learns too that Ariel can be victorious and forgiveness can occur. Okay, so I'm nearly there now. This is my last slide, and then I'm going to show you how to apply this exam question. So it's interesting to think about this idea of self-actualization. So Prospero becomes an aligned self. So it's almost like he is restored to his true self by the end of the play. So he's had this awful experience that's torn him up inside. And he's had a very complex experience with like familial betrayal. It's his own brother who's let him down. He's brought up a daughter from 3 years old on his own, absent mother, alone on an island for 12 years. Okay, and it takes till Act 5, Scene 1 for him to sort of reach this aligned self by acknowledging Ariel's advice and letting Ariel go. He's letting go of magic, because Ariel also symbolises magic, which was his tragic flaw. If we look at him from a tragic reading, if we look at genre and we think about a tragic hero, it isn't a tragedy, but it's got elements of a tragedy. If we look at magic as his fatal flaw, he lets Ariel go, and he lets sort of his pride and his sin and his vengeance go through Caliban. It's only then that he is aligned and balanced and able to address the audience and say sorry, actually, okay? And I think this, this conversation really lends itself to that psychoanalytical as well. He talks about Caliban and says, this thing of darkness unacknowledged mind. So is that an acknowledgement that that is me, that is part of me, that I have to let go of in order to be an aligned self, okay? So if you've got a question about restoration of order, about reconciliation, about forgiveness, about self-discovery, about learning, there are a multitude of things that you can bring this journey that Prospero has with Caliban and Ariel into. Okay, you can talk about self-discovery. You can talk about Prospero learning about himself, Prospero discovering sort of the true nature of what he wants to be. Okay. Questions, sample questions, past questions from OCR for the proposition side of the exam, which is 50% A01. So your understanding of the play, your knowledge, your use of terminology, your written expression, your argument, and 50% A05, your ability to use critical readings, different perspectives, productions, named critics. There are a multitude of ways, counter-arguments that you can get marks at A05. And all of these titles, you can bring in a psychoanalytical reading. So this defined truth laid in Caliban's subplots offers nothing more than comic relief. You could say, no way, because if you read Caliban as part of Prospero's psyche, and the learning of the pages that he was defined to overthrow Prospero is symbolic of that sort of vengeful, marginalised, isolated part of Prospero's character that he's grappling with. Okay? Ariel leads the characters to their reconciliation, He's a psychoanalyst reading he does. He shows Prospero and Caliban use the nature of magic. He shows empathy and sees Prospero from torment in that way. Okay, I play about self-discovery and then look at Prospero giving himself over to noble ways of guiding theory by seeking forgiveness at the end. You could also look at Caliban self-discovery and seeking for grace and realising what he's been doing is foolish. Caliban is nothing more than a deformed slave, and he's not. He's sensitive, he can learn, he uses difficult language. He loves Prospero, he's in his states as him, changes, apologises, he seeks the grace. There's really rich in terms of how you can use a psychoanalytical reading of the Tempest. Okay, so I'm going to stop there, and if you want to ask me any questions, you can. Okay, I've got to help you, but if you want to go, of course you can. I hope you found that useful in some way. Okay.